His real name was Carlos Mendoza, but it had been so many years since he'd used it that it seemed almost alien to him. Here on the inner frontier among the sparsely populated worlds that lay between man's sprawling democracy and the galactic core, men changed names with the ease and occasionally the frequency that their brothers in the democracy changed clothes. Mendoza had had many occupations in his 61 years, some of which he wished to forget, and some that he wished his enemies would forget. And he had had almost as many names, but the one that had stuck was the Iceman. There were people who said he was the Iceman because he had once been the ruler of a planet totally covered by a mile-thick glacier. Others said no, that he got the name because he was a cold-blooded killer. A few suggested that he possessed a rare disease that threatened to kill him by lowering his body temperature, and that's why he had finally settled on the hot desert world of Last Chance. The Iceman didn't care what people thought about the genesis of his name. In fact, there wasn't much that he did care about. Money, of course, and the power he exercised as the owner of the end of the line, the only tavern on Last Chance. But over the years, he had lost interest in most other things, except gossip. Miners, traders, explorers, adventurers, and bounty hunters would stop on Last Chance to refuel their ships, or lay in their supplies, or register their claims, or occasionally to wait for their mail or their rewards to catch up with them. And they would come to the end of the line, and they would talk. The Iceman never asked any questions, never volunteered any information, but he listened intently, and once in a long while he would hear some tidbit that momentarily brought a touch of animation to his impassive face. When that happened, he would disappear for a week or a month, after which he would return to Last Chance as suddenly as he had left. Then he would sit in the bar and listen to more gossip, more tales of adventure and daring-do, of fortunes made and fortunes lost, of battles won and empires fallen. His face expressionless. Those who cared about him, and they were few and far between, occasionally asked him precisely what he was hoping to hear, what it was that he went off to find on his rare excursions. He would politely sidestep their questions, for, despite his reputation, he was a courteous man, and shortly thereafter they would see him sitting at another table, listening to another traveler's tale. He was not a physically impressive man. He was an inch or two below normal height, and he carried about 30 pounds of excess weight, and his hair was thinning on the top and white on the sides. He walked with a decided limp. Most people assumed that he had a prosthetic leg, but no one ever asked him, and he never volunteered any information about it. His voice was neither deep nor rich, though when he spoke on Last Chance, it carried a ring of absolute authority that very few men challenged, and none ever challenged it twice. He was known throughout the inner frontier, but nobody knew quite what he had done to acquire his notoriety. He had killed some men, of course, but that was hardly sufficient to establish a reputation on the lawless frontier worlds. It was rumored that he had once worked for the democracy in some covert capacity, but by its very nature nothing was known about his job. Once, 14 years ago, he had disappeared from Last Chance for a number of months, and word had it that he had been responsible for the deaths of quite a few bounty hunters. But no one could verify it, and the details were so vague that very few people put much credence in the story. There was one woman who had heard the story and believed it, and after many false starts, she finally tracked him down in his refuge on Last Chance, half a galaxy away from the affluent, populous worlds of the democracy.